A nation's most important asset are its people and the natural resources bestowed upon it. Yala Swamp is a transboundary wetland lying between Siaya, Bondo and Busia Districts of Nyanza in western Kenya. The wetland is one of the most fragile ecosystems and biodiversity conservation entities around Lake Victoria. Yala Wetland is the basis for livelihoods for an estimated 1 million people living in the area who have little or no assets to depend on. From time immemorial, the swamp has served the communities as a source of fish, water, agricultural land, pastures, building materials, wood fuel, and herbal medicines. The swamp, which hosts 3 freshwater lakes, namely Lake Kanyaboli, Lake Sare, and Lake Naboyo, has a filtering effect on the waters draining into Lake Victoria. It retains nutrients and sediments and prevents organic pollution load from reaching the lake, and it forms the mouths of both rivers, Transoia and Yala. Many rare species of birds, fish and wildlife have inhabited the wetland for centuries.
Communities in the Yala Swamp area have over the years been dependent on the resources of the Yala Swamp for their livelihood. Women go to the Yala Swamp to get papyrus reeds, which they use to make mats, to make baskets, and which they sell to make monies to sustain their own families and take their children to school and so on.
Land as a resource forms the very foundation of lots of social, political, economic and other facets of the organization of a number of communities, including defining ourselves as a nation. Even from the 2 key Maasai agreements, the 1904 and 1911 agreements, they were about land. The result of that is that the Maasai groups lost a lot of land, but above all is this was extended to the movement from the White Highlands to getting the average African or Kenyan for that matter to move to the margins, to the reserves.
I was born here. My mother, Marcelo Bong, was born in the swamp, in that Gunda which is called Gunda Chel Kanyadero.
Namkaye mwa motega, namkaye mwa ngwede alo, namkaye mwa timegi mora mora. Sani gonyonge ka mwa mode yen. Ero nyochi wadonjo mana kakoro wanyewo yen, wanyewo lot, tuwanyewo mogo. Emomiyo ne jo ng'ado koro wadonjo ka mondo wachak pur eri purwani otamowa.
Land as an asset is very critical for defining lots of relations in this country, and that makes it very emotive.
Dominion Farms Ltd, a subsidiary of Dominion Group of Companies based in Edmond, Oklahoma, USA, moved into the Yala Swamp in 2003. The initial proposal was that Dominion would engage in rice production in an area previously used by the Lake Basin Development Authority for agricultural activity. Despite the fact that a National Environmental Management Authority license was yet to be issued, Dominion Farms Ltd embarked on the implementation of the proposed development activities.
The Luo community and the Abanyala communities that live within and around the Yala wetland area are historically known to be indigenous fisher communities. When they are restricted from accessing wetland resources, which include water bodies that have fishes in them, then basically you seriously interfere with their lifestyles.
The Ministry of Environment and Mineral Resources has policies and has laws and regulations that says wetlands must be preserved and conserved as wetlands.
When Dominion Farms first came to Yala Swamp, they were welcomed by the local communities. The communities knew Mr. Calvin Burgess, the project's driving force, who had earlier established the Dominion Church as a friendly and caring missionary.
Dominion kanobiro gilemo kwa paro nen jalemo sama nobiro nwamor kaka en musungu konyoga jarateng
musungu dikabe donjo ka waweyo na maber nikech dini manoki koro jo amoko dag wan ng'atni okwadwa jomoko na uketho no maendeleo karo wadonji pier mong'ama onge.
There will be a time in a few years when people will come to Nairobi. They won't stop in Nairobi. They'll come to Kisumu and they'll drive to this farm to see what's happening here. And this will be the jewel of Kenya.
The official inauguration of the Dominion project was full of pomp, hope and excitement, fitting such a landmark occasion. To many, this marked the dawn of a new era for economic development in Nyanza and Western Kenya at large, which had previously been sidelined.
For a long time, this country has operated on a development paradigm that we are going to develop through foreign direct investment. What that has translated to is that we give prominence to the foreign investor, be it a multinational company or be it a foreign government. What that means, therefore, is we are willing to undermine our own laws and institutions to be able to accommodate the foreign investor. 2, pay no heed to local communities in any particular area where we want certain investment to take place.
To no go Yala noko makoma wantisha ne mir to reach wene go
kabiro tedo kana nongo kajipuro ga inam kacha wan korwa kuma no ae nene okwane ne kane go mama ne chiek ga kako mama na neno ka ne wadi ndalo guwono oduma na anu anko chiek bunda loruwenya to kane Dominion obiro oduma no norume koro ne wan gu yuto maber makata ka wok batero nyathi na clinic Siaya tipenja kaka rito nyathi tangisogi nuwan watiyo mana obaro kanyo onge tich moma chwora tiyo kata mikowe pesa
wadhi kuro wapuro dikiel ai marari okwero wana ongo oduombo go boke to ne kodi koro obo miwa ogo ni achiel obo miwa mchele bo miwa didi dikiel
to dhako woki ode saa 11 odikiny to samoro dhi loka chagi tiende chigni akene en mailadi tidwa ni chopo kanye wang' kama en saa achiel yudo kisechopo tidonji tich saa achiel tidwa chako pudho lum saa achiel no nyaka saa 11 mar odhiambo titiyo bang' wige 2 tichamo siling' 1,000 gumi achiel
watiyo bang' wige 2 timiwa msara siling' 1,100 bang' wige 2 1,100
seche mawo kuno tuwa onge ngima koro kata nyathi bende seche ma nyithindo ni mier yathi ko makadho nyaki mier nego gwen nyithindo be bedo go homa nyithindo pongo hospital nikech yath migoyo.
Dominion itself has no what we call corporate social responsibility. It does nothing for the community. You'll hear people cry, roads are being blocked. Roads are being blocked, there is no access. People are not allowed into the swamp.
People are accused, and especially the poor, very vulnerable community people, are always accused of encroaching either into the swamp or into portions of land that were leased to Dominion farms. In the absence of clear boundaries, it is not possible to tell who is or is not encroaching. Most of the time, community people have been arrested, detained, and arraigned in court for encroachment, although those boundaries are not clear to them. When Dominion Farms was given the 3,700 hectares plus the 3,200 hectares, it is alleged that there are maps, there are beacons, and so on. But most of the community people that we've interacted with do not know where those boundaries are.
There was a demarcation done, and the land that is now referred to as Phase 1 was clearly demarcated and was gazetted.
This land is not a wasteland. It was not a dumping site. It is a very productive, arable land.
This was not land. It wasn't gazetted. It didn't exist. This was a swamp.
Adequate consultation is important. Let the community give consent, but that consent must be informed consent.
When it came to signing, putting this thing down on paper with pen, we were not involved. The county council did it on our behalf.
The communities residing within and around the wetland also raised the following concerns: unclear boundaries and a procedural lease of trust land by the Bondo and Siaya county councils, encroachment into private land by Dominion Farms, environmental pollution and degradation, violation of principles of easement, intimidation by provincial administration and the local councils. The communities in the neighboring Bondo district also faced the same challenges as a result of Dominion's occupation of the Yala Wetland. Dominion's flooding of Bondo district has resulted in the creation of new man-made lakes, making human transportation an impossible, dangerous and expensive ordeal.
Dominion jinsi aliweka msalaba akafanya mambo yake ambao hata ilichinja kondoo, alichukua kondoo tena kazika chini juu ya hiyo msalaba ambao tumeshindwa. Christian anaweza fanya vitu kama hayo.
Dominion is here to take it all. We lost livestock here. Everything that we were planting in our farms were also washed away, as you can see. We had a market here called the Dua Market, of which now you cannot even tell that there's a market there before. You can see public road E1176 has also been submerged.
Watu wamejitoa kwa wengi kwamba wanataka kulima na waoni jinsi penye wanaweza lima, ikiwa penye walishaandaa wanatolewa na Dominion.
Kuro ni wapo kaja msungu ubiru kata gima nini iluongo ni dai siginio ne wakia ni waparo ni berber wapoka pi misungo dino pi mipi oduogo ginye
jopiny ni kod chandruok maduong' kod Dominion kata sani makata thuolo mowuoye sani ni gidhi mbele kod ketho gik ji kaka rabolo, oduma, rabuon, niang' gimuko sani.
Wan gi hinyruok maduong' moloyo. Eri ma wan go kani. Eri ma wan go kar kani en moritowa, orito Bondo mangima.
And we welcome the idea because we really needed investors to come to the village and help the people. But things changed around late 2005 when Dominion encroached into our private farms and also encroach into community land.
The Dominion, they were given 3,700 hectares and leave the other part for the community. He have decided to take even the community's land.
Dominion hata kuchunga tu ng'ombe. Amekanya watu ng'ombe yako ikanyaga tu shamba lake uko ndani.
This is the community land, the grazing land where we used to graze. Now it has been taken over by Dominion through this multipurpose dam.
Pigno kuom dhano ma igisi wuok an achiel kuomgi chieng' moro nakadho kawuok malo kanyo tabiro to nogo yath gi ndege. Koro an bende akala kabiro kanero motieno to noyudo ka pes to napoka iyano nokirre manowuok nikech yadhno ero ne en yath madum kabisa. Bende achiel kuomgi matiyo e iye kanyo koro iye osewuok diriyo ma mama neri luoko ni Jacqueline en bende iye osewuok diriyo ma kata sani en osiptal.
The concerned authorities failed us. The administration, Pewale can speak it out, they were compromised, Nema people failed.
Economic opportunities in the adjoining Bunyala district are limited and poverty levels are high. Most of the community rely on fishing, small-scale farming and trade, which have been affected by the presence of Dominion farms. Whereas the swampland annexed by Dominion farms does not cover Bunyala, the effects of its activities impact on the socio-economic development of the district.
We are not in the areas, operation areas of the Dominion, but his activities are really affecting our community. The activities being that when he releases his water, or the water from his farms, it all pours into our community, and you will find that agriculture is affected, vegetation is affected, people's movement is affected, people's well-being are affected altogether.
Since Dominion took over the development of his part in the swamp, he blocked the Yala River, directed it to Lake Kanyaboli, and made another canal which was to flow water into Lake Victoria. But this canal that he made from Nyakaboli is directly to the residential areas of Bunyala people in the villages, for example, Madua, Bohoma, Yanga, Luani, and Bovamba. So whenever he releases his water, he does not give this community any notice.
Many families have been split or displaced through flooding by Dominion farms.
Jalo shali sio mkwali manga paka mkari yeye kulima paka kunyanza.
2006 tumekuwa tunaathirika na mambo ya Dominion. Maji yalikuja, hakuna mtu anatarajia.
The water that he normally releases from his farm are contaminated with chemicals.
And it is the same water that these people in our locations use for drinking.
In absence of roads, dugout canoes are the only means of transportation available, causing untold suffering to the community.
You find areas of conflict, including complaints about environmental pollution through aerial spray. You find complaints right now. The community is demonstrating because there is an issue of boundaries.
So there is no proper control over this water. It's at this moment, if this man is controlling the water as he likes, when there is no water, he controls, we can't get enough water. When there is a lot of water, he releases a lot of water, again it has an effect.
There have been a lot of harassment from the police, harassment from the provincial administration, harassment from local politicians, meted out to the poor, very vulnerable, marginalized community people.
The affected communities and civil society organizations involved in environmental justice have recently held peaceful demonstrations to articulate their plight and make their voices heard. Although the recently promulgated Constitution of Kenya guarantees fundamental freedoms of expression and assembly, the communities have received hostile treatment from the provincial administration, other security organs of the government, and hired goons during these demonstrations. It is evident now that the conflict between the community and Dominion farms could spill over, resulting in tragic consequences.
The Friends of Yala Swamp, or those member organizations, came into the Yala Swamp area. They have been dealing with issues of environmental justice and natural resource management.
What we are saying as a community, we want our land. And if you wanted to enter phase 2, it follows that we must sit down, we and the council and Dominion, and discuss these things clearly.
Jopiny nigi ng'eyo kama phase 1 ogiki. Ma phase 2 nowenegi mondo migiti kowuok e dho jatelo mar Dominion, ma en Musungu wuon. Gisani ok giyie mondo mi Musungu donje kanyo, to koro Musungu donjo kanyo kod thuon. Omiyo ang'eyo ni ok giyie kod gima gitimo sani.
The play, A Man for All Seasons. There is a scene that is played between Sir Thomas Moore and another lawyer called Roper. And Roper says, I would cut all the laws of the land to achieve that. And an agitated Sir Thomas Moore says, oh, and when all the laws are flat, Roper, and the devils turn upon you, where would you hide, Roper?
Akwayo sirikandwa mar Kubati to kod Raila winje uru ywakwa.
If the Dominion and the government can't listen about our problem or grievances, it will force the people to go by force inside the swamp, because it belongs to the people, not the council. So people will be killed there.
Imefika wakati ambao wananchi wataondoka wote kwa jumla, alafu wakufe kwa Dominion.
It's like the mammal era in 1952.
Aro kuba kurebanga mbo omuya ono haranganya sibindi bifwe anyalo rukhorera si.
Many of the world's devastating and bloody conflicts have emanated from quarrels over utilization and ownership of natural resources. Depletion or lack of access to resources has led to the continued impoverishment and exploitation of individuals and communities living around the Yala Swamp. Unless the government intervenes and an amicable solution reached, the region is headed towards an explosive and destabilizing crisis. How, where, and when this will end, only time will tell.